You've put in all this work to finally break into tech sales, and now the economy is arguably the worst it's been in our working lifetime. Let's just be real today about how much the economy has changed even in the last 6 months. And going back a year ago, companies were still hiring like crazy, adding tons of headcount, and in particular, tons of entry-level tech sales roles to bolster their go-to-market strategy. Yet 6 to 7 months into 2023, it feels like it's impossible to even get an interview, let alone a job offer. Again, I'm just being honest here. It is not the same as it was even 6 months ago, but not all hope is lost. I myself am working at a company that is fortunate to still be hiring, and I've seen firsthand, both in my own experience and also coaching many other students as well, how the dynamics have changed. And to be clear, I'm not only seeing people again at my own company or in my own network that have sales experience. In our program, Tech Sales Ascension, that I co-created with top performing tech sales reps in the industry, in this last week alone, we've had 3 students land either their first offer or start their first ever job as an SDR in tech sales. It is definitely possible at all levels of tech sales to get a job right now, but the stakes have changed. And I want to walk through the exact things that I'm seeing now that are honestly at this point a non-negotiable if you even want a chance to do it. But kudos to you for being here and actually watching this video in the first place. I'd also add that's something we talk about in our free lesson in Tech Sales Ascension. There's a link in the description there if you do want to check that out yourself. And also, one thing I do want to call out today, again, regardless of the path that you take, if you can self-educate in YouTube, if you ultimately need a boot camp, I can't tell you, having coached hundreds of people now, how amazing it is to me that even if I give a video like this, even if this video gets thousands of views, if you actually do this, if you actually follow through with this advice, you are still going to be one of a select few who actually do it and actually do it well. I'm just constantly amazed at how many people prefer watching YouTube videos and getting excited as opposed to actually doing it, actually learning trial by fire. And we're going to talk about a couple of simple things that, again, are now a non-negotiable that you need to do when you're applying to a tech sales role. And to very briefly set the stage as well, I think it's worth calling out what used to work maybe a year ago before now. Because having a solid resume in LinkedIn has always been a non-negotiable. Check out the description. Again, I've got a free YouTube tutorial that's very extensive, 45 minutes talking about the ins and outs of how to build your resume in LinkedIn. But once we've done that, what really became popular, again, tech sales really the last year and a half or two has gotten way more popular. And whereas when I started, if you actually took the time to write a custom message to a hiring manager, you were one of a very few people who actually did that, and it immediately set you apart because you're basically showing how effective you are as an SDR by actually messaging the manager themselves, right? And now a lot more people know that. Again, it's not just because they know that you should stop doing it. But my point being is the stakes have raised. There are hundreds of applicants per job listing, as I'm sure you've seen if you're looking on sites like LinkedIn, on Indeed, and many other sites as well. And again, just calling out that standard playbook is apply to the job and then immediately find the recruiter, the sales manager, send them that custom message. And oftentimes you get an interview because, again, you're showing the proclivity to actually be a good SDR. But I really want to call out 2 things that I'm seeing now specifically that can heavily increase your chances. I've seen people that have applied to jobs with hundreds of applicants and they're still getting interviews. And I might even add, I'm going to link another video in the description as well. I actually interviewed a friend of mine who is a BDR manager at a fast growing startup. That said, it's not like a huge brand yet. It's not one of those unicorn startups that everyone totally knows about yet. But he's even mentioned over the last year or so, and especially the last 5 to 6 months, anytime that he listed an SDR opening, he was getting bombarded with messages. When he first started, maybe over a year and a half to 2 years ago as an SDR manager, oftentimes he would have to go out of his way to potentially recruit candidates. And then something happened where tons of people started to apply. But unfortunately, there were tons of very horrible messages, very low quality candidates sending very generic copy paste messages that were very clear that they didn't do anything. But I will tell you, even though he was getting hundreds of people applying, he still gave preferential treatment to the folks who went out of their way and not just sent a message, but actually sent a very well constructed and very concise message that actually showed they had done some research about the company. And this is table stakes. I'm even seeing cases now where that method has become so popular, there are actually managers at some of the biggest companies in the world that are getting 500 plus applicants that are actually locking their LinkedIn and not allowing you to message them because they're getting so many right now. So where does that leave us today? How can we actually still have a better chance of actually getting an interview? And one of the reasons that sparked this idea for the video is one of our graduates, Ben, I was catching up with this past week, had actually had a conversation with his SDR manager who was talking about how he was making decisions on who to interview, especially now where they have so many people applying. And this is actually a nugget that I hadn't even thought of back when I was first breaking into tech sales, because honestly, the tools that you have at your disposal now were not quite as complex as they are now when I was breaking in. And so one of the things that I hadn't even heard of before that you should absolutely do when you're applying to tech sales jobs and trying to break in now, his manager has actually had people get a free trial of software like ZoomInfo or Lucia. There's many other tools. Again, those will be linked in the description as well. But they're using these free tools and searching who the recruiting manager or the BDR manager is. And they're actually cold calling the BDR manager themselves to ask for that interview. And keep in mind, this is a very renowned market leader in their space type of company. This is a company that is getting hundreds of applicants on job openings. And so this is what it now requires. You have to go out of your way and actually make cold calls to a manager. If you've never done that before, sorry, deal with it. There are lots of templates online. There are lots of things on my channel, on many other channels of how you could structure a cold call. And again, keep it short and sweet, just like you would on any type of message that you send to a sales manager. But that honestly sounds like it's what it takes now. You're gonna have to cold call people, even if you've never done it before, and actually try and strike up a conversation, show your interest in the role, and ask them when you can interview for that position. The other thing that I think so many people take for granted right now is you have to understand, I am very fortunate right now to be employed myself. I know it's a very tough market out there, and sorry to hear some of the news that's been going around. There are a lot of people that are very empathetic and sympathetic to that. Don't get unrealistic. Nobody's gonna do your job for you. Nobody's gonna make an introduction that gets you a job. You still have to perform. But all that to say, I think a lot of people do not utilize networks that are readily available to them. Whether that's online, certainly, but even if you're even around any type of city that's big at all or has any type of tech presence, if you live in Atlanta, in Austin, in New York, in LA, San Diego, all these huge cities, there's numerous different meetups that you can go to with sales professionals to even start networking. There's numerous people on LinkedIn that you can reach out to at your target companies. Ask them for 15 minutes. Find an SDR that has a similar background to you. Network with them, not even necessarily asking for them to make an introduction or a referral, but even just starting that conversation. And there's so many people that put the burden on themselves when they otherwise could start working an account just like you would as an SDR and especially as an account executive. And if you're not actually doing that, you're really not setting yourself apart in any way, shape, or form. And yes, it might be uncomfortable, and I would recommend going the cold calling route first. But I see so many people, again, now with the success of the channel, and again, thank you for the support. There's only so many people I can help in a day. It's getting really difficult. There are tons of professionals out there who have probably, if they've worked in sales for 10 years or some period of time in their life, they've probably been fired and or seen layoffs. They know it's not a fun situation, and they really want to help people who are actually eager and actually wanting to break in and have a successful career actually do so. So you've really got to put yourself out there this year, especially. Again, like I mentioned, absolutely cold call the manager. I've made numerous different videos around resume, LinkedIn optimization, also how to message hiring managers as well. Another one I'm going to link in the description as well. But also, you've really got to think outside of the box. You've really got to be comfortable putting yourself out there. If some of you have seen one of our former students, Prince, who we interviewed, he did an incredible job, obviously taking advantage of the coursework he had with Tech Sales Ascension, but he was taking in every book that he could. In New York City, he was going out of his way to actually meet at tech sales meetups, at sales meetups, and even in his own company, he was working as an engineer at the time. He went out of his way to talk to the salespeople at that company because just the fact that you work together gets you an easier intro than if you're messaging someone cold. And this is the effort that it takes. And if you really want it, it absolutely can happen. There is no doubt about it in my mind, but you have to understand that the stakes have changed. You cannot play the victim and be upset and say, oh, I would have broken in if it was the economy, or I would have done X, Y, and Z if there weren't so many applicants. Unfortunately, guys, no one cares. You've got to accept it is what it is, and you've got to do what it takes to break in. Again, 100% possible. Rooting for you. Let me know if you have any questions below. I'm happy to help your own situation. And also, again, if you want to check out our free lesson of Tech Sales Ascension, that's also in the description as well. But hope you guys have a great week. I know it's tough out there, but again, definitely possible. Rooting for you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.